Hey again, everybody. So, today I'm going to talk about mistakes and forgiveness. So, the quote at the beginning here is from Vinland Saga, and I wasn't quite sure who to kind of credit the quote, so I just said Thorfinn from Vinland Saga since that's the character that says it. Although I guess you could argue that technically it's the author, but you know what the source is. But if you know about Vinland Saga, then you know that the story is mostly about atoning and seeking forgiveness for the mistakes that you've made. And that's what I want to focus on today. Now, recently I haven't made any super major mistakes. There's been nothing really that I think that I've done in recent times that I feel especially guilty for, or that I feel that I need to take any action to find that forgiveness. But the thing is that I think more often than not, it's finding the forgiveness from ourselves that's the most important. And like in Vinland Saga, of how much Thorfinn struggles to attain forgiveness from the people that he's harmed, but also the hardest part is when he fully forgives himself. And that's what the quote at the beginning is saying, that a man must raise more grain than he has trampled in his life. His hands must build more homes than they have burned. And this isn't something where you need to kind of recall every mistake that you've made and kind of count them and think, okay, I need to, like, this is a debt that I have to pay, or this is a something that I have to keep track of so that I ensure that I'm doing more good than I'm doing bad. It's not something you can really keep track of, and I think it'd be a waste to try to do that, and it would just add more stress. And so, in my experience with things like this, I don't so much go out and do harm to somebody and then have that dwell on my mind. I mean, I'm not really in a lot of situations where I get into fights or I get into disagreements or things like that, and I try my best to not say anything that would be offensive or cause contention. But there are times where those things just kind of happen anyway, and you're not really aware of it, and you're not really thinking that this is going to hurt somebody or whatever it may be. And maybe they are valid in feeling hurt by it. They could be overreacting, but maybe you could be too. And so being able to identify when you feel that guilt, and when it is a matter of when you almost feel like you deserve a punishment. And a lot of people have different ways that they deal with that, and there are good ways to deal with that and very, very bad ways to deal with that. And for me, I guess the number one way that I found to make it up to myself when I do those things is, first of all, when it is with another person, it's very hard for me to hold on to that for a long time, to hold on to that feeling of guilt and frustration. And so usually I the turnaround time is pretty quick, and I talk to them and try to talk it out. And if that's not possible, then maybe I do live with that for a while. But when it's other things like mistakes that I've kind of made against myself, then it kind of lingers for a much longer time. And I mean, there's times where I think that I've fully gotten over something, and I think about it, and I'm like, ah, man, that was so stupid of me. That was such a that is probably the worst thing that I've ever done. And it's hard to not tell yourself those things, because for whatever reason we hold ourselves to such a high standard. And even though we forget that we're not always going to meet that, and it's good to have high standards, sure, but it is more important to have high standards and high forgiveness, and to be able to do that for yourself. And I think the main thing that I do that with is especially when I fall short on goals, and when I feel that I'm not doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, or when I slip out of a good habit and it becomes a bad habit, or I have a bad habit that I just can't shake, or a bad way of thought. And this is something, a good example of this is some of the jokes that I used to make. And you know, we've all been in high school and middle school, and we all had kind of the go-to, you know, kind of darker, edgier jokes that we would make. And it was funny, and we thought that it was funny for the fact that we knew that it would make other people uncomfortable, and we wanted to kind of look like that we couldn't be touched, that we joked about these things because we didn't feel anything about them, right? And maybe that's not exactly what it was for, but there was a point when I got into college that I began to realize how often I made those jokes in my head, or when the point when they weren't really jokes anymore. And I would catch myself thinking those things, and I would be like, why am I saying this? If I said this thing out loud, I would be embarrassed. If I said this thing, or if anybody knew that I thought about these things, you know, like this, that would be horrible. And so I kind of had a self realization of how negative that it really was. And every now and again, I'll have those same thoughts, and it's it's kind of hard to not be frustrated when those things come up, because I think, oh, I've gotten past this point. I don't make those jokes now. I'm trying to think as cleanly as I can, and then things come up, and then it just comes in, and I'm like, why did that thought go into my head? And it's kind of that call of the void, kind of that sort of thing. But it does feel like you're kind of falling into that old habit, and there's just a little twinge every time that it happens. Now, that's not to say that I don't think that bringing light-heartedness to a darker topic, I think sometimes is healthy. But in the way that it was when I was in high school, it most certainly was not. And I think I've done a good job in recent years that I don't think the same way about a lot of things. But I also want to talk about having opinions, and when sometimes you might think that your own opinions, that you're mistaken for having them. And I want to talk about this because I know, at least if you live in the US, that tensions are high. And no matter how you feel about the most recent election, or where you fall on the political spectrum, we all feel it. And we all feel distress, and we all feel like there's a lot of division going on. And I've certainly felt that. And I won't get too specific into this, because this is a very personal thing that's going on with me. But there are disagreements with people close to me, and it's very hard on both sides to not get emotional and to not feel like you have to convince the other person to be on your side. And I've been thinking about this for the past few days. And I am a person that I don't like to confront people. I don't like to have fights. I feel horrible afterwards. And but for some reason, when it comes to politics, when I'm so caught up in it, a switch is flipped, and I get angry, and I get frustrated that I'm even getting mad about it, because I'm kind of getting mad about these things that don't really affect me all that much. I guess it's important. These are important things to think about, but they're important things to think about and have civil and knowledgeable discussions over. And for most people my age, and especially me, I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know the first thing. All I know is what my personal feelings are. And that's what the issue is with a lot of these things, is that we attach our personal identities or our personal feelings with these things that are completely outside of ourselves, that we have no control over. And so it feels like when a person disagrees with you, that that's a personal attack on your identity. And I know that I felt that way. I've had times in the past, but especially recently, with just, how the political climate is in our country, that I do feel like my personal identity is being attacked. And until I step back and take a deep breath, and I realize, wait a minute, no, this doesn't define me. I'm my own person. Why should I care about whatever is, some of these things do affect me in some way because I'm a citizen, but in the current moment, in the current day, and what I do day to day, is that affecting a whole lot? Not really. And one of the biggest realizations that I had was how much that this was coming from TikTok and from social media, but TikTok in particular. I deleted it a couple days ago, or yesterday, because of the stress that it was bringing me. Because I began to realize I only get fired up about these things because I see a post about it, and then it gets in my head, and then I kind of have these fake scenarios of me debating somebody or having a fight over this thing, and it just brings me stress, and it just brings me hate, and it's not feelings that I want to be feeling. And if we didn't have phones, if we weren't constantly connected, nobody would be fighting about these things. Sure, they would still be going on, but for the average person who's just living their day to day and just go to school and just go to work and are just doing their day to day things, they would be none the wiser. And yes, that kind of sounds bad, because the people do need to be informed, but we are so over informed, or we think that we are, because we have seemingly infinite access to all of these things. Everybody thinks that they're an expert on it, and I think that too about myself when I'm in that headspace. That, oh well, I know this because I saw this post, and it said this thing, and I don't. I don't know anything about these things. And sure, if I took the time to really research it, and maybe if that's what I was studying in school, is like how all these things works, and I had all the statistics and all of that stuff, and I wrote a freaking paper on it, then yeah, then I could talk about it because I'd be educated on it. But I catch myself getting so mad about these things, and then I'm just like, what am I saying? Why am I acting like I know what I'm talking about? And it's just leading to fights, and it's just leading to disagreements. So yeah, so suffice to say, I deleted TikTok, and I really haven't had a political thought since I deleted it. And I think that would be a good idea for a lot of people to do. And along those lines, this is a issue that I've had before, and I struggle to kind of forgive myself or try to grow more than what I've trampled in these times that I've gotten upset. And so yeah, I'm always trying to get better about these things, and I had some time in high school where I felt the same way, and I was very very polarized and very divided in myself because I didn't know what I thought, and it led to fights, and it led to disagreements, and it led to me just thinking lesser of my fellow human beings. And when those thoughts are entering your mind, and when the word hate enters your mind, you got to take a step back and write the things down that you are saying. I had to write some things down, and I'm like, I sound crazy. Why would I wish this on another person? Why would I hate somebody so much just for the fact that they differ in opinion? So just remember that we're all just here on a floating rock in space, and whether there's a higher purpose or not, the only thing that we have right now is each other, and whatever powers may be, you always have the power to choose how you react, and you always have the power to cultivate and plant more than what you've trampled. That's all I have for you guys for today, and I'll see you in the next one.